Before we get started, this episode of The Evergreen focuses on a racist hate crime. It includes graphic descriptions of violence as well as hateful white supremacist language. Keep that in mind when choosing when and where to listen.
I was in the back of the van, and then we were driving, and we saw some skinheads at this gas station on Burnside.
This is China. When she was a teenager, she fought against racist skinheads in Portland. One of her friends, Jonathan, was also an anti-racist. The van they were in was his. He'd shown up earlier that day and said, "The skins are showing up." So off they went. They spotted a few of them from the road.
And I was like, "Stop, let me out." So I got out and I went up to these guys. This is what happened. And I was like, "Are you white pride?" "Yep." And I slapped him. "Are you white pride?" "Yep." Slapped him. "Are you white pride?" Slapped him. And then I got back in the van. They didn't do anything. They didn't respond and drove off.
We're using China's moniker instead of her full name because of concerns for her safety. At the time, she and her friends would drive around like this, looking to find and confront racist skinheads around town.
There was a lot of not drive-bys with guns, but drive-by punchings and slappings and stuff like that.
In the late 1980s, young anti-racists were getting organized against white supremacists in Portland as neo-Nazi skinheads were targeting and recruiting within the local punk music scene, a scene China and her friends were a part of.
We really felt like we were regulating them. No, you guys are not going to take over the scene.
Local chapters of the national groups Anti-Racist Action and Skinheads Against Racial Prejudice, or the Sharps for short, were formed in Portland. Anti-racist youth activists in the city were galvanized by the brutal murder of Mulugeta Seraw. He was a 28-year-old who moved here from his war-torn home of Ethiopia and studied at Portland State University. In 1988, he was killed with a baseball bat in front of his apartment complex by 3 neo-Nazis.
You're not going to kill people. I really felt we wanted vengeance for Mulugeta. I remember feeling so angry for him. And I knew folks, I didn't know him, but I did know people in the Ethiopian community, and it just made us so angry that they would kill somebody.
From the Gert Boyle Studio, I'm Jen Chavez, and this is The Evergreen, a podcast from OPB about the place you call home. Our episode last week focused on Mulugeta Seraw, who he was, what he stood for, and his American dream, as told by his uncle. This week, how white supremacy grew in Portland and its punk scene, and how communities fought to push neo-Nazis out of the city. OPB producers Nora Coley and Dan Evans take the story from here.
Probably the first local punk band I saw was Poison Idea. It was life-changing. I was like, this is what I've been looking for.
This is Jason. He's a member of Anti-Racist Action, or ARA, a grassroots organization born out of the hardcore punk scene. We're not using Jason's last name because 40 years after fighting white supremacists, he's still concerned for his safety. Back in 1980, the legendary punk band Poison Idea formed in Portland. This is their song, Marked for Life.
You were there, the perfect crime. Take my final breath. Noose pulls tied, a perfect fit. Swallow me with your mistrust. There's a monster in my mirror.
Other popular bands were
Napalm Beach, Dead Moon.
This is Dead Moon playing Graveyard.
I think I started listening to punk rock music after my cousin turned me on to it. Gave me a mixtape with a bunch of punk music, and I was like, wow, this is cool.
That was China again, and Tom Tegner, a member of Sharps. Another popular band was The Obituaries with Monica Nelson, here singing Love Always.
Jason, China, and Tom found their people in downtown Portland. The kids were looking for a place to hang. Downtown was the place to be because that's where all the cool kids were. At 12 years old, I tried to be there every chance I got.
Living in the suburbs, it was somewhere that I just didn't want to be in a lot of ways and didn't feel comfortable. I was always in trouble and looking for something else. And so, yeah, every chance we got, we were like, let's catch the bus and go in and just get lost.
It really drew me in because it was like all kinds of different kids there.
You had the punks, you had the goths, you had the skaters.
There were rocker kids.
We were trying to find something that wasn't this mainstream aesthetic or reality. And finding punk, that was the place. That was the place we wanted to be.
And in the 80s, Jason, China, and Tom started noticing skinheads at different music venues they were hanging around at, like the Starry Night, the Satyricon, and especially the Pine Street Theater.
I used to see skinheads all the time in Portland, and you never knew if they were anti-racist or racist. That's just something we had to be wary about. There was a handful of black youth in the punk scene. China was one of them.
There was a lot of tension. It was dangerous. It was dangerous there.
A lot of those guys were Nazis, but you couldn't really miss them because they had the big green flight jackets and the boots and shaved heads.
And I remember hearing like people saying the N-word, and he was like, not you, your nose isn't big. And I remember, to be honest, I remember like, yeah. And then I remember like, wait, who's he talking about? Like, what? I got so angry when I kind of like realized you're talking on my dad, my family, and like I'd always been angry, but the pieces started to fall into place why I was angry, what I was angry about.
The irony is that the original skinheads were part of a multiracial subculture in the United Kingdom.
The skinhead culture came from Jamaican immigrants mixing with working class English kids.
It grew out of black culture.
It wouldn't even exist without reggae music.
Skinheads adopted the sounds of two-tone and ska, and later punk. In the UK, skinhead fashion was inspired by the sharp style of Jamaica's Rude Boys, known for tailored suits, skinny ties, and pork pie hats. Add in a distinctly working-class vibe rooted in workwear jeans, suspenders, steel-toed work boots, and closely cropped hair, and the skinhead style was born.
But also the Jamaican immigrants brought their own dignified influence to it.
You know, that was in the 60s, and then later in the 70s, you know, the punk and the oi and all that stuff started kind of coming into it.
Most of the girls had bangs, and the girls pretty much were what the guys did. They might have a kilt.
By the late 1980s, around the world, a shaved head, combat boots, and a bomber jacket began to be associated with white supremacy. Racist skinheads co-opted the movement and even created white nationalist punk music. Young people who were in the punk music scene, like Jason, China, and Tom, were seeing more and more racism and violence at the music clubs.
Nothing about them was skinheads. They were basically like heavy metal dudes that shaved their heads. But we would never give them the respect of calling them a skinhead because they weren't. They stole that. So, you know, we just called them boneheads.
It was weird because, you know, these were all people that were in the scene. Many of us knew each other well. So, you know, you'd go to a show and you'd see all the people you knew, people that we went to night school with or, you know, you skated with. And one day you were all friends and the next day you were like, what is happening?
But the violence was not restricted to young people in Portland's music clubs. By 1988, violent attacks by racist skinheads were happening citywide and had targeted nearly every community in Portland, from black people and an Asian family to the gay community.
There was tension in the city.
This is Terry Currier, the owner of Music Millennium and a longtime fixture in the Portland music scene.
We started seeing a lot more skinheads coming into the store. They were asking for bands out there around the world that were professing the message of Adolf Hitler. A big skinhead contingency started living over on the east side here, Belmont, Hawthorne area, and there was a number of times we would have window displays for different artists, and I know we would have a window display of somebody of color, and I would come in the next day and the window was egged.
And a lot of the racist extremism in the city was among the youth.
I didn't think Hitler was cool. I'd never been taught that in my life, but I know that these kids did seem to think that he was cool.
My grandfather fought in the Battle of the Bulge, 10th Armored Division. Like, I knew Nazis were bad, so I wasn't trying to hang out with any Nazis.
China herself was the victim of a terrifying attack by neo-Nazi skinheads outside the Pine Street Theater. That attack occurred a week before Mulugeta Seraw was murdered.
So I was all ready to go, fishnets, kilts, lady docs, and I went to the show at Pine Street. And I went in, and right away there was just like a lot of skinhead. There was that energy that, like, it was so thick you could cut it. I remember there was some skin girls there, and they were coming up to me, and they were like, "Hey, N-word bitch, where do you get those boots?"
China says things got out of hand. There was a mob of racist skinheads out front chanting horrible things.
Send the N-word out. And they were talking about me. They knew that I was there, and they were asking for me to come out. I was scared, and so there's a group of people that were like, "Well, no, we got to get you out."
So China got into a car while they were still yelling at her and soon realized...
I'm in the car, so they're all like on top of the car, like pressed, bodies pressed against the car and like shouting and screaming. They had bats. They broke out the two back windows. The guy in the front driving, he got punched and his car wouldn't start. I wasn't touched, okay? Finally, the car started. We drove away and, we went across Burnside and we got away. But I'm sure they would have killed me.
It's also around this time that racists calling themselves skinheads began appearing on national television programs like The Oprah Winfrey Show and Geraldo.
Meet the man who has already been broadcasting his message of white supremacy, Tom Mieske, former Grand Dragon of the KKK, head of the White Aryan Resistance, and host of the Race and Reason cable program.
Our guests that you'll meet today are truly hate-filled. We're fighting a civil war between our own people. Racially conscious white people need to preserve their heritage and culture.
You could see a direct correlation with when those talk shows were having the Nazis on. You started seeing more of them.
The murder of Mulugeta Seraw happened in the early hours of November 13th, 1988. It galvanized anti-racist youth in the punk music scene to organize and push the neo-Nazis out of the music clubs and out of Portland.
It was people like China, Tom, and Jason trying to fight for a difference in the city.
Coming up after a break, a landmark lawsuit over the murder of Mulugeta Seraw and the fight to take out neo-Nazis in Portland. Thanks for listening to The Evergreen, our podcast from OPB about the place you call home. If you've learned something new from today's episode, subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll bring you news stories every Monday morning about the history and people that make the Pacific Northwest what it is today. You can also follow OPB on Instagram at OPB, or follow me directly at Jen Chavez OPB. That's Jen with 2 N's, and I'll keep you posted on everything Team Evergreen is up to. And remember, this episode about Mulugeta Seraw and the anti-racist organizing that grew out of his murder, and all the great OPB reporting and storytelling you hear on this show, is made possible by the support of many thousands of OPB members. That is the power of public media. Support our journalism by becoming an OPB sustaining member today at opb.org/pod. And now, back to the show.
In last week's episode, we told the story of how Mulugeta Seraw was brutally murdered. He had been at a going-away party for a friend who was returning to Ethiopia.
On the day of the murder, members of the neo-Nazi group East Side White Pride, including Ken Mieske, Kyle Brewster, and Steven Strasser, had been distributing white power leaflets in downtown Portland. Mieske, Brewster, and Strasser were arrested for the killing and pled guilty to avoid criminal trials. Mieske was sentenced to life in prison for murder. This is him in 1991 from a video interview with OPB at the Oregon State Correctional Institution, talking about killing Mulugeta Seraw.
When we left, I looked at him after he'd been kicked a couple times after, he got hit. And I looked back down at him, before we left, and he was still breathing. So I said, I figured, well, okay, because I kind of had a feeling, we kind of beat this guy up a little, too much. But everything just happened so fast, And when we left, it was like, I told everybody, God, I hope you don't die. They said, no, he can't die. And about the next day, afternoon, I was watching football and I heard he died. And then it's like, public outrage.
It was like after Mulugeta Seraw when I was just like, whoa, we can't, we got to do something.
They're not going to terrorize us. And I think that was a shift where we got we're about to get organized and start looking for them.
Tom told us that, at the time, it felt like the city was on fire.
The Sharps and ARA stood up as a force against these Nazis.
I remember people talking about getting the meetings together, and I heard someone say ARA, Anti-Racist Action, grew to be a nationwide and even international grouping of anti-racist activists. ARA and Sharp were working together in the music scene to confront and combat the white supremacists.
We'd always fight side by side, when we'd go for the Nazis.
Shortly after that first ARA grouping, the next show we decided we're going to be there. We talked to the club and we got the club to agree to not allow any of the white supremacists in. We were out front and definitely kept the lot away from the show. And that happened for about 3 shows in a row, that they would show up and there'd be confrontations.
Another group that formed in response to Mulugeta's murder was the Coalition for Human Dignity, or CHD.
So the Coalition for Human Dignity worked with lots of different communities, including the punk community, the gay and lesbian community.
And it was all mostly put together by young people, like Eric Ward, who became a board member of the Coalition for Human Dignity.
We did research, looking through newspapers, and clips, subscribing to hate group publications and attending hate group meetings. And we made that research available to everyone. We did lots of interviews with the media.
The murder proved to be a boost for neo-Nazi skinhead activity in Portland and led to the forming of the Coalition for Human Dignity. Today, that group released a report on white supremacists in Oregon.
So that citizens can be empowered, you must first know your enemy before you can defeat him or before you can adequately deal with him.
In 1990, CHD released a report on organized white supremacists in Oregon. It showed that white supremacist groups, including neo-Nazis, racist skinheads, and Christian identity groups, were present in nearly every corner of the state.
CHD was doing what the government and leaders in civil society refused to do, which was to actually protect and stand by their actual communities and the most vulnerable.
And CHD served as a bridge between the Sharps and ARA.
CHD was getting intel, and then people would show up at where they worked, and we'd get them fired. We'd find out where they lived, and we'd get them evicted from their apartments.
Jason said this tactic was important.
It was also a tactic that tried to balance with the physical violence that was happening.
There was a lot of violence at this time between anti-racist and racist skinheads. They were constantly in fights.
It was very much gang warfare. I don't know any other way to sugarcoat it. They were looking for us, we were looking for them.
At one point in 1993, there was another killing when anti-racist skinhead John Baer shot 21-year-old neo-Nazi Eric Banks in a parking lot. It marked a moment when Portland's anti-racist movement turned deadly. All the violence and fighting deeply affected anti-racists like China, Jason, and Tom.
Also, there was a cost at being enraged and having to constantly protect yourself. And then as you grow up, like how do you function? Like I think I couldn't go to school because I've been so busy like fighting.
There were definitely times I wasn't ready for it, especially when I was much younger. I had to grow up a lot.
When Mulugeta Seraw was brutally murdered, hate crimes didn't slow down. In fact, they grew. A report released in 1990 by the Metropolitan Human Relations Commission recorded 84 hate crimes from May 1988 to May 1989. 77 of those 84 hate crimes occurred after the murder of Mulugeta Seraw.
In response to Mulugeta's death, the state of Oregon strengthened its hate crimes law by requiring police agencies to report all bias crimes to a statewide database. Oregon also expanded the definition of bias to include sexual orientation. Community, especially among the youth, came together to fight for a more just city. This is China and Tom again.
We set the bar for what happens here in Portland. I mean, we really brought it.
I feel really good about what we did. We changed the face of the city. Scholars can sit there and debate whether we did it the right way or not, but Nazis understood violence more than anybody, so when they get to experience violence at them, they definitely understand that.
Eric Ward, the former board member for Coalition for Human Dignity, says, Mulugeta Seraw was a sacrifice that told us enough is enough. But his story is not just about death.
He is a story of how a community comes together and holds itself, even in the hardest times.
Community did come together. After the murder, the Ethiopian community turned to black leaders for support. Mulugeta's uncle, Engeda Birhanu, recalls with gratitude how Black United Front founder Ron Herndon and other leaders came to Mulugeta's apartment, where members of the Ethiopian community had gathered to mourn and consider their next steps.
2 or 3 of us from the Black United Front, I called two or three partners and said, hey, they need our help. So we went over there, and I never will forget this. We walked in this apartment in Southeast Portland. These women, if I remember correctly, about 3 or 4 women, they're all dressed in white, and they were just sobbing. And that's when we met Engeda, as best he could, described what had happened, because he had limited information, and he said, we need help. We don't know what to do. I said, okay, we can arrange a press conference and we can talk to some attorneys. Is that what you want? He said, yes. I said, we also can pull together a rally downtown Portland. Do you think that would be helpful? Yes. We did all that.
In the days that followed, Black community leaders, together with the African Student Union and Students Against Apartheid from Portland State University, organized a rally of hundreds of people calling for justice for Mulugeta and standing against hate. Ron Herndon remembers the Black community being absolutely horrified.
We realized there, but for the grace of God, it could have been any one of us. Horrified. It was an act that we're all too familiar with. Of a Black person, especially a Black male, being caught by themselves in a hostile environment and ended up being murdered. That's a story that's been repeated all too often in America.
In January 1989, more than 2,000 people gathered in Pioneer Courthouse Square to protest Seraw's killing at the City of Unity Rainbow Rally. Another 1,500 people gathered in October 1990 for the March and Rally for Dignity and Diversity.
Two years after Mulugeta Seraw's murder, the Seraw family sought justice in a civil trial.
But this was much bigger than just Portland. It involved a national white supremacist organization.
because the three men who pled guilty to murdering Mulugeta Seraw had been hanging out with Dave Mizella, a youth leader of white Aryan resistance, also known as WAR. WAR was founded by notorious white supremacist Tom Mieske. Mieske had sent Mizella to Portland to encourage racist skinheads like East Side White Pride to become more violent and outspoken about white supremacy.
Mieske was on the rise in the white supremacist movement. He was a very powerful force overall at that time.
Eleanor Langer is the author of 100 Little Hitlers, a deeply researched history of the murder of Mulugeta Seraw.
I think the first thing to know about Tom Mieske is his long history in various aspects of the racist movement. He had a very important niche in the movement through his Race and Reason TV shows.
What are skinheads?
You're looking at them.
You're looking at
You're
them.
looking at them.
They call you Nazis all the time, and you're terrible racists and all that.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
Big high that.
They had enormous audiences. They were the greatest showcases for the skinheads.
The 20 million people who are watching this show today, many of them were not aware that this is even going on.
And they were violent. That kind of stuff hadn't been on national television before.
And he got it in his head at some point that what he needed were some troops on the ground. And he got it in his head that the skinheads would be a perfect match for him.
This is Eldon Rosenthal, a former attorney in Portland. He co-led the civil trial against Tom Mieske and WAR.
After Mieske and Brewster were arrested, Mieske picked up their cause. He had a telephone number you could dial and then get your racial message of the day, kind of a thing. He said on one of those messages that the skinheads had done a civic duty by what they did to Mulugeta Seraw.
You have reached Aryan Update, a production of WAR, White Aryan Resistance. State line, Portland, Oregon. That the initial BS is waning in the skinhead Ethiopian confrontation. We may find that these beautiful people were high on crack. And many of these beautiful Negroes had law arrest records. Sounds like the skinheads did a civic duty.
In April 1990, Mulugeta Seraw's uncle, Engida Burhanu, worked with the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League. A civil suit was filed in Multnomah County Circuit Court against Tom and John Mieske and WAR on behalf of the Seraw estate.
Did the Mieske directives for violence cause the murder of Mulugeta Seraw? Were the Mieske actions protected by the First Amendment right of free speech? It's important to remember that this is a civil, not a criminal action. However, as our background report indicates, what the Mieske are, what they believe, what they represent, is at the heart of the trial.
On the opening day of the trial, skinheads, onlookers, and Mieske supporters gathered outside the courtroom amid heavy security as police sought to prevent any acts of violence.
It was important to us in the trial to explain what was Mieske's motive. Why would Mieske have sent Mizella up here? How can we pin this horrible murder on somebody that was 1,000 miles away?
Lawyer Eldon Rosenthal again. The trial raised important First Amendment issues. Could the Mieskes be held accountable for a murder that happened when they were 1,000 miles away?
And the way that we decided to do it was to create this whole picture of who Mieske was and what his motivation was, so that when Dave Mizella testified that he was sent up to Portland by the Mieskes with the express understanding that he was going to take the skinheads out and beat people up on the streets and in the parks of Portland, which is what he testified to, it would be believable. Because without the background, it just sounds bizarre. But with the background, it totally fit together.
The Mieskes did not have attorneys. They chose to represent themselves.
Mr. Mieske, do you train anyone in weapons, knives, or baseball bat violence? And the answer is no. Mr. Mieske, are your primary weapons ideas, newspapers, and television production? Yes.
Dave Mazzella, the youth leader of WAR, was a key witness in the trial. He testified that the Mietzkers had sent him to Portland to organize East Side white pride to commit acts of violence against racial minorities and gay people.
Full name is Alan David Mazzella.
In November 1988, Dave, when Mr. Seraw was killed, were you the vice president of WAR's youth division?
Yes, I was.
In that capacity, did Tom and John Mieske instruct you to teach skinhead recruits to commit violent acts against blacks and Jews and other minorities?
Yes, he did.
Did these instructions include the commission of physical violence?
Yes, it did.
The trial resulted in a $12.5 million judgment against the Mietzkers and WAR for inciting the violence that led to Mulugeta Seraw's death. The judgment bankrupted Tom Mieske and crippled the white Aryan resistance. But the ideology Mietzke spread didn't stop.
The white racist movement, the white separatist movement, will not be stopped in the puny town of Portland. We're too deep. We're embedded now. Don't you understand? We're in your colleges. We're in your armies. We're in your police forces. Stomping Tom Mietzke is not going to change what's going to happen in this country now. I just did my little bit along the way. Like your great salmon. I got up there and laid the eggs, and now if I die, no problem.
Eleanor Langer, who we heard from earlier, says that the racist movement Mietzke led grew.
It wasn't stopped. It grew, and it is growing. They are so close to power now, and probably closer than they've ever been in the history of this country.
No Jews or gays, no mongrel USA! No Jews or gays, no mongrel USA! No Jews or gays, no mongrel USA!
This is from 1990.
A rally today by right-wing extremists has Portland in a state of emergency. Members of the so-called Proud Boys lined up for a picture, chanting "Back the Blue" while doing a white power salute.
This is from 2020.
From the U.S. Department of Labor, a message. One homeland, one people, one heritage. Remember who you are, American. An ICE recruitment ad featuring the turn of phrase, "We'll have our home again," plastered over an image of a man on horseback and a stealth bomber flying in the distance. That's a reference to the song "We'll Have Our Home Again," a white supremacist anthem favored by the Proud Boys.
Oh my God, we'll have our home again.
And this is messaging from across the U.S. federal government that draws on ideas and images from white nationalist circles.
Our civic institutions need to be strong. It's why the rule of law needs to be sustained. And it's why the task of combating racism and sexism is every generation's obligation and duty.
You can see Nora Coley and Dan Evans' in-depth Oregon Experience documentary about Mulugeta Seraw at opb.org. We've also linked to it in our show notes. If you'd like to learn more about Mulugeta Seraw and how his killing changed Portland, we highly recommend It Did Happen Here, an anti-fascist people's history. That's a podcast and book that share the history of the anti-racist movement in Portland in the 80s and 90s. You can also check out Eleanor Langer's book. It's called 100 Little Hitlers, The Death of a Black Man, the Trial of a White Racist, and the Rise of the Neo-Nazi Movement in America. Thank you for listening to The Evergreen, a podcast from OPB. Mia Estrada produced this episode, and our technical director is Stephen Cray. Layla Isbell engineered the episode. The OPB podcast team also includes Julie Sabatier and Sage Van Wing. Nora Coley, Dan Evans, and Elizabeth Miller did the interviews you heard. You heard clips in this episode from the Oprah Winfrey Show and Geraldo. Additional broadcast clips came from KPTV, KGW, CBS Weekend News, and PBS NewsHour. We also used archival footage from OPB and Tom Metzger's propaganda television show, Race and Reason. And you heard an archival clip from a telephone recording made by Mieske. Music you heard in this episode includes the songs Marked for Life by Poison Idea, Love Always by The Obituaries, and Graveyard by Dead Moon. Additional music in this episode comes from Audio Network. And hey, if you have a question for us, please reach out. You can send us an email at theevergreen@opb.org. I'm Jen Chavez. Catch you later.